It's a sunny day, September 9th, 2014, and if you have been living under a rock, you don't know that this is the bicentennial or the 200th anniversary of the Battles of Plattsburgh.
A wonderful day it is.
And if you to add Linda Harwood's age and my age and Calvin's age, it still wouldn't amount to quite 200.
I hope not.
You're the youngster among us. Those of you who are regular viewers of Hometown Cable and or Our Little Corner know that we've been associated closely with Linda for such a long time in this community because of her interest in history and because of our interest in history. You loved history when you were a little girl, Linda.
I did. I was hoping to create some.
And you have. You've done a beautiful job. I found myself with my little portable soapbox singing your praises the other night because of all the wonderful creative things you've done, and you do so many.
Thank you, Gordy.
For those of you interested, you can go on HometownCableNetwork.com and perhaps see one or more of the interviews that we've done with Linda concerning the battle commemorations, concerning the carvings and paintings, and God knows what else.
But this is a fun one.
This is a fun one. It all started, at least as far as I was concerned, a few months ago when Linda called and said, you know, Gordy, what do you know about, what is it, cribs to coffins, crib to coffin?
Cot to coffin.
Cot to coffin. And I said, nothing. And you started to explain why this wonderful quilt show happened. Tell me all about it.
Well, Jean Welch thought it would be very important if quilters got together to create quilts to celebrate this time. And doing some research, came up with the Cot to Coffin quilt, which measures 30 by 70. That's the size that the soldier carried on their bedrolls. They were frequently made by their wives, their mothers, their grandmothers, their sweethearts. So we now have 42 quilts here representing people's interpretation or they're honoring a loved one or a relative, and they're all different stories all around, and hopefully you're going to get to interview some of the women today as to why they created the quilt that they did.
They're beautiful. As you know, I love quilts anyway. I've told ghost stories at quilt shows and interviewed many quilters and judged a few and so on. Now, what's the coffin end of it? You talked about the quilt, the fact that it was a bedroll. Sometimes they were buried in these?
Yes, if a soldier should die on the battlefield, frequently they would just be shrouded in the quilt and either brought home or buried at the site.
So who did this one?
This is my most exciting quilt. This is a 5th grade class.
Come on.
From Peru, New York.
You're kidding me.
No, the two wonderful teachers, Mrs. Cook and Mr. Korth, and they gave each child a square of fabric and then 3 pictures of items that were used during that time period. The child was to take the pictures and the piece of cloth home and choose which one they wanted to represent. So we have all different things represented here from 1814. For instance, the butter churn.
The butter churn. Calvin's looking at the kids now and the history, the living history.
These two teachers are so wonderful. Not only did they create the quilt and the children learned all this history, but she took pictures of the item that she gave them, and then each child has a photograph of them holding their little square that they created, and some of them went home and their grandmothers helped them.
Oh, don't you love it?
Oh, yes, yes, and they're all so charming. There's the beehive, there's whiskey barrels, there's gardens on here, just too precious.
It looks like there are 24 squares.
Yes, and
on this quilt.
Mrs. Cook sewed the squares together and then, put the binding on. But each square was made by one of the children in the class.
And exceedingly clever and creative. Some of them utterly three-dimensional, with the little gardens and the corn growing and the cabbages and a butter churn.
The little flute. Every time I look at it, I see something new.
These are absolutely amazing. I don't know what these would be. What would those tree over there.
I think that was some kind of a garden thing
You do?
growing.
Okay.
Or, no, maybe it was nine pins bowling. There's nine pins. That may be what that one
Oh,
is.
see how
The
clever
nine
those are, the
pins.
9
Yeah.
pins.
Yeah.
Yes. And the beehive. And the pewter jacks.
And the items they would have used for sewing
For
back
sewing,
then.
look at this.
And the page from a reader learning to read. The Jacks game.
Oh, just absolutely clever. And look at the field with the
With the
pigs and the
pigs,
livestock
corn,
and the corn and
The
the
buttons. That, I don't know what,
scrapple.
Scrapple. Oh
Yes,
my gosh.
Scrapple, that's wonderful. I remember Scrapple.
Yep.
So this is beautiful. This is the one you're especially proud of.
Oh, yes, we enjoyed having the kids participate.
And
and
it took
to
them
make
how
this.
long to do this, Linda?
I think this was several weeks in the making, and their goal was to have it done for their history days they have every year in the spring. They have a history day out at the school, so that was a big part of that.
For people who might be watching this program elsewhere, who really aren't familiar with what September 11th means to us, you know, 9/11, 9/11 has different meanings for different people, especially since the towers came down in New York City. But for us, 9/11 has always been a special time because that's when the actual Battle of Lake Champlain
Took place.
occurred.
Yes.
And so I say we collectively, I didn't have much to do with the planning of it, but so many people worked so hard and have worked so hard and will work so hard to make sure that this 200th anniversary is one to remember for at least another 200 years.
Actually, I think Kit and Gary have been building up to this crescendo, and this being their final year, they have certainly succeeded. It's going to be a wonderful event, and
It
we're
has
very
been so far,
Right.
and we're only in the middle of it.
right. We're very glad to be part of it. We're a new part. There was never quilting before, but we're very glad to have pulled this together with the different women in the area.
Well, it should have been part of it for a long time because quilting has gone on for centuries in our nation and, of course, in various other countries in the world.
Yeah.
And the old quilting bees that we've heard about so many times and read about from our great-grandparents and their great-grandparents.
The ones we cherish at home on our own beds, yes, yeah, the
So
old
when
ones.
did you personally get involved with quilting?
I think I got involved at around 1998.
Really?
Yeah, not too long ago. A person had me go to a meeting with them, and I was hooked on the colors. I joined quilting because of choosing colors to make something with.
Colors and patterns are always fascinating to me just because it shows a creativity that it's hard for me to imagine. Some of the patterns are familiar because they've been done before, and some people come up with their own ideas, don't they?
There are new ones. We have a couple of very new looking in the pictorial category here, but the new innovative fabrics and technology today, you just can't imagine what they're doing, and I get so excited because I want to try them all, and I don't have time, but some of the ladies here today will explain their techniques and why they came up with the design they did and what it represents.
We're so fortunate to have this quilting organization. What's it called?
The organization that we have locally is the Quilters Guild,
Yes.
and there's like 135 members.
Wow.
This is not officially a guild project because we put the call out to anyone.
Anyone who
Anyone.
wanted to get involved.
Most
Well, maybe
of them
you'll have
were
some new
made.
members, huh?
We have
Oh,
a couple
really?
new people sign up. Yes. Well, I think maybe 75% of this is made by guild members, but we do have some other women that were not guild members. We have a couple from Lockport, I think, that
No
joined.
kidding.
Yeah. So you won't get to meet them today.
Well, I should let people know, in case I didn't make it clear at the very beginning of our show today, we're doing this in the third floor auditorium at Plattsburgh City Hall. That's been many things down through the years. It's been the Clinton County Historical Association's museum at one point in time. It was a recreation area, the workout gym for the city police when I first came
Oh,
to
my
town,
gosh.
because city police headquarters were in this building down on the first floor.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And a guy by the name of Keith Herkelo, who was the city clerk, decided to gather forces, get volunteers, and recreate this
Refurbish.
building and refurbish this building. A lot of the work was done by hand. If you look around, you just see
It's beautiful.
it's fantastic. And Calvin and I have been fortunate to come here and cover many events. One of the most recent was about a week or two ago, the oil train forum that they held here, about the oil trains that are coming north and south
The worry
from
area.
Montreal down to Albany and so on. But we've been to some wonderful events. There is a small stage here. I like the feel of this place. I like the people who visit here.
I like the acoustics.
Well, there's certainly sound bounces around, and that's why we got the microphone so close to our faces so it doesn't go to the ceiling and come back down again. So we're going to go walk around and talk to some of the people,
Right, I'll
and look at
get
some of the
ladies
quilts.
ready.
And I think this will be a good day, don't you, Linda?
I think it will.
Thanks so much for
Thank
inviting
you.
us.
Thank you and Calvin both for coming.
We got a little soft music playing in the background. I just want our viewers to know that while we were chatting in between scenes here for our program at the City Hall Rotunda in downtown Plattsburgh, Calvin's calculating mind was adding up to see if the three of us did go up to 200 years, and sadly we might have crossed that barrier. Of course, I've crossed over many years ago, and I'm on my way back again. Kathy Davenport,
Hi,
how the heck are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm terrifically good.
That's good.
Every quilt is a gem.
Yes,
Now,
it
how
is.
did you come up with this concept?
Well, I wanted to do the Kent Delord house as an impression going this way, but they said, no, it has to be vertical, not horizontal.
Oh,
so I
see?
had to change my plans.
Oh, no.
So I went to Fiber Junction and I got some material from the early 1800s, as close as we can get to 1812. And then I took pictures of the Kent Delord house, and this is a banner that was hanging near there, and another picture of the Kent Delord house. So I combined the 18 and 21st centuries together, and I printed this out on fiber and put them together, and I got this, and it's an homage to the 1800s and our time.
That's wonderful. And, you know, it wasn't too many years ago when you couldn't do that kind of transfer.
No.
Now they're putting people's photographs on birthday cakes. So
Yes.
I guess putting it on fabric is not so much of a big deal as it once was.
No, you buy fiber that's already treated and backed with paper, and you just put it through your printer, and you print it just like you would a picture. So it comes out like this. You iron it, and it comes out, and then I just put some fabric around it to get it longer. And then I found that the quilt wasn't wide enough, so I added this band of
Oh, come on.
brown.
I never would have noticed that was an afterthought. Come on.
Yeah.
I thought that was just a very clever addition
So
from
it's-
the very beginning.
It's very asymmetrical, but I do things asymmetrical. I like
That's my
asymmetrical.
whole life. I'm left-handed. Enough said
me
about
too.
that.
Yeah.
Well, this star design, that's an old design.
Yes, it is, and I did it on point, which means that instead of this way, they're on point.
Right.
So it's a little different than doing it straight across.
People who don't make quilts, maybe they do a little crocheting or a little knitting or a little needlepoint. They have no idea what effort takes to do a quilt like this. Do you keep track of your hours?
No. No.
Maybe it's
Absolutely
just
not.
as well.
No, I do quilting. I usually have 3 or 4 projects going
Oh,
at
do
one
you
time.
really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness. So you don't know, how long did you spend on this? Months? Weeks? Days?
Probably a full week if you want to put it in one
Yeah,
time period.
but stretched over whenever you had the
Right.
time and the energy
Right.
to get it done.
Right.
huh?
Right. Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure for us to be here, and it's a pleasure to have themed material at a quilt show.
Yes.
I've told people before that Kay and I visited quilt shows in places where they didn't have any idea who we were. We just heard about it in a town we happened to be visiting and would drop in and enjoy the local effort.
Right.
Well, this involves, what did I say, 40-some, 42?
42 quilts.
42 quilts.
Yeah. And it all came from Linda and Jean, Linda Harwood and Jean Welch, and they deserve a big round of applause.
Well, you deserve a big round of applause, too. We're delighted that you decided to do this and hang your quilt here today.
Yes.
Kathy, we love it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for being here with us.
We're delighted.
Thank you.
Well, we've been to Plattsburgh, we've been to Champlain, and now we've got to go to Altona.
Yes, you do.
Velma Perrier, how are you?
I am fine.
I am also fine. I love your quilt. Tell
Thank
me
you.
about it.
Well, the whole idea was to make a quilt that the soldiers would use and that their moms and their family members would make. So, in my interpretation, I tried to make it very simple. And what I felt the hours that moms and loved ones would wait at home was very long and tedious, waiting for news. So that's what this represents, kind of a very simple, and this represented the hours, and that's basically where
I love the sewing.
that's-
The sewing is great.
Thank you.
You got the stars.
I got the stars, and then the journey that he took, and that's what that kind of reflected
I
for
think
me.
now, the hourglass design, that's an old design.
Very old.
How far back do we know?
Oh my goodness.
I've seen it on old quilts,
Yes.
very, even before the War of 1812.
Yes, but I have no idea how far it goes back. I just think it's just something that everyone can relate to.
But I'm so interested in how these ideas are conceived. Did you spend a long time deciding, or did you just say,
Very long. And I just read some old quilting books from that era and read different verses, and this is what popped out for me.
see, that's what creativity is all about, and who knows, maybe the spirits of all these wonderful old people are getting in your head in the middle of the night.
Oh, I hope so, because
Yeah.
they were pretty brave and
Well, I want to mention again to those people who might be just turning their television sets on, the exhibit is called Cot to Coffin.
that's correct.
The reason is because they were similar to coverlets that would be used on cots in the beginning when the children were born. They would fit a normal sized cot. This is the kind of blanket that would stay with the soldiers and became their blanket roll. You've seen the pictures of them with
That's
a roll
correct.
on the
That's
back. And
correct.
sometimes, because of their untimely deaths, they would even be buried
That's correct. They would
with
be
these
wrapped.
things
Yeah.
as a shroud.
Right.
And very often their own mothers and grandmothers and daughters made these
That's
quilts
correct.
for them in the very beginning. So the idea of quilting goes back.
Quilting goes back. Anytime you saw 2 layers of fabric with a batting in between for warmth, and they're tied together and stitched together, that is quilting. And it goes back forever.
We all have our favorite quilts at home. Some of them are packed away because they're so old they can't be
Right.
put on the bed every day, and others we use on a daily basis.
That's right. Those of your favorites, though, roll them, don't fold them.
Oh, that's it. That's good. There's a lesson for you. Write that down, Calvin. Roll them, don't fold them.
Roll them, don't fold
And it
them.
has a ring to it.
That's right.
You're wonderful.
Thank
Velma,
you.
Thanks so much for being here, and thanks for what you've done for
Okay,
us.
you're welcome. Bye-bye.
What's your last name?
Welch.
Welch, Jean, right? Okay, Jean Welch, how are you?
I am very well, thank you.
You and I have been together in events in
Yes,
the past before.
we have.
We love your quilting organization.
Well, thank you. And
How many total members? Over 100?
In the guild?
Yeah.
170, but
Oh.
this is really not a guild
It's an open
It's
event
open,
to quilters
yes.
from everywhere.
Everywhere. We've had quilts submitted from Locke, New York, and also Lockport, New York.
Isn't that
So,
great? Well, this one is Jean Baird. Tell me a little bit about
well,
it.
Jean is from Mariah.
Yes.
And Jean, this is a quilt that she made, and she created a verse related to the fabric that she used.
Come on.
Oh, yeah. We are very clever people.
Okay, you want to read it for
Yes,
me?
I would. This is a story to a soldier from his wife. And a soldier's wife picked gold fabric to symbolize their wedding ring, which frames flowers to brighten his day. Red and yellow apple fabric for his sustenance, gray fabric with 1,000 hearts if he should die, and tiny roses to bring him home safely.
Don't you love it?
It's wonderful. It's kind of a tearjerker, isn't it?
It really is.
But
And it's quite beautiful in a simple way.
it is. And, that's the thing about quilts, is that there is so much time and decision making that goes into making one. They really are very special.
We're tapping into a little bit of that creativity today by trying to, where did the idea come from? How was it conceived? Did any of these people come to you ahead of time and say, here's what I'd like to do, or did you just let them go with it?
Well, we created criteria for the exhibit, and it could be either a traditional quilt or a pictorial memorial quilt. But other than that,
The size was important.
the size is important because you can see their uniform for the show to be hung. But the thing is that people really dug into their hearts and their family history to come up with what they have done.
So they all have a very deep meaning. Let's walk over to the next one.
This one is called Canterbury Revolution, and this is done by Terry Doty, a gentleman who happens to be a member of our guild.
Don't you love it? I do.
What he did was he was at Canterbury Shaker Village over in New Hampshire, and this was the floor of one of the buildings.
Come on.
No, I'm serious.
Did he take a photograph?
So
or did...
he took a photograph and analyzed it, and then came up with a simulation of the floor in the quilt block. This is very often done.
No kidding. I didn't know that,
It's
but what a great
often
idea.
done. And you're taking something very personal from where you were, and then you're translating it into a quilt. He tied the quilt, which probably, most likely, would have been done in
yes, of
earlier
course.
times.
I love it. All right, let's move again.
This is Jan Bunn, and Jan lives in Morrisonville. This is called Sailing Homeward.
Oh, this is
And
special, isn't
the
it? They all are.
star
But...
in the center. The quilt is designed to honor the sailors of the Saratoga, Ticonderoga, Preble, and Eagle. And Sailing Homeward, the central medallion is called a Mariner's Compass,
Yes.
which is very popular in quilting. And I think Jan just really did a phenomenal job. It's beautiful, and the use of the colors, it reminds you of the evening sky, I think, but also...
really does, doesn't it?
It does. With the brown, it just is typical of that period of time.
Now this display
Mm-hmm.
in the City Hall rotunda up on the third floor, it is here for what, 5 days, 6 days?
Today is our opening,
Yes.
and we are here until 4 o'clock.
Yes.
Tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, we open at 10, we close at 4. Friday, we open at 10, we close at 5. Getting tired. And then on Saturday, we open at 10, we close at 4. We will be closed during the parade because most of us go ahead and march in the parade.
I should remind our viewers that they'll be watching this long after all these celebrations are over and far into the future, I hope. But at least we get a time element as to when you're going to be here. What happens to all the quilts when it's finished?
After this is finished, a sampling of the quilts is actually going down to Keysville to their historical society, and it will be on display there for 2 weeks on the days that they are open.
Now, some of the quilts will be for sale by the people who made them.
Some are for sale, and if they are for sale, they have a sheet like this on them, and we have had lots of people express interest in purchasing. And we connect the quilter and the potential purchaser, and they talk about.
arrive at an end
They-
product and the
yes,
price
they,
and the
they
whole
do it
9 yards.
themselves. I have trouble
that's-
enough handling my own money.
Oh my goodness! How many quilts have you made?
Oh my gosh, I don't know, but if I put too many more on the bed upstairs, it's going to fall through.
There won't be room for the dogs and the other people.
I think what most quilters do is I never really make a quilt specifically for someone. After the quilt is made, then I think about people or meet new people or whatever, and there seems to be something that clicks with a person and the quilt, and then I give it to them.
You're preaching to the choir because I know that things click. That's the way it is in this world. Okay, move over this way a little bit so Calvin can get a
right.
good look at it and tell me
And
about it, Jean.
This is made by Sue Minnie. And Sue Minnie lives right here in Plattsburgh. And Sue made this, and she calls it Thank You for Your Service. And what Sue wanted to express in her quilt is a very loud and boisterous thank you to all of the Army troops, the militia, the volunteers of the United States. And that is her way of saying thank you. One thing that the Guild does do is we do a lot of charity quilts, and a lot of the charity quilts that we do are specifically for veterans. So we try to make sure that, as in this time, when a soldier had a quilt to take with him wherever he was going, that we try to do that now too. Regretfully, there aren't enough of us to make sure every single soldier has one, but maybe someday.
What a nice gesture, though.
Maybe someday we will.
You know, I meant to ask Linda before, who conceived of the idea of having these quilts made for the bicentennial? Was it a community effort, you and Linda and other people, or just...
Up in Sackett's Harbor on the St. Lawrence River, they had a show.
only did?
They did, and it was 2 years ago. And I saw that, Jack Barrett saw that, Linda saw that. And then we put our heads together. We approached Gary Van Kit and with the idea of doing that here. So we did.
It evolved.
It
All right,
evolved.
I'm going to move again. Come
I
on over
think
here.
this is just a plucky.
I do the plucky rooster
And
right
this
there.
is Betty Ashline up in Moores.
Oh,
and
gosh,
Betty,
look at this.
Betty is just as plucky as
Isn't this
this quilt.
amazing?
It is all used materials. There
Oh, it
is
is.
nothing new.
Come on.
No, not a thing new. And to me, I look at this and the way it is discolored, and I think, wow, did Betty really make this, or did she maybe fish it out of Lake Champlain? But it looks old. It's happy, and you know, you can just think about a rooster out there just crowing his little head off, and to me, that is the feeling that I get from this quilt. I think she just hit it right on the head, the feeling she wanted. Her personality is in this quilt.
She got September 14th, and I wonder why. September 14th, 1814, instead of September 11th.
I'm not sure.
Not my fault.
The last thing I claim to be is a historian.
Well, the battle on out in Plattsburgh Bay was, of course, fought on September 11th, but there were still things going
There
on
was,
on the 14th
maybe
for sure.
that rooster was still out there
He
making
was
a lot of
probably out there.
noise.
He probably around for a while before he became lunch. I love it though, isn't that beautiful?
I just
Just a very
you know,
special. If I had that, it would be up every day on
kind
my
of
front
makes you
porch.
want to tap dance.
I
or
did.
something.
It's really great.
We had this up in we were in the mall all last week.
Oh, I know you were. Did quite a few people stop by?
Oh, yes. Showing a fourth of the collection each day. And so a couple gentlemen came by and they looked at this, and so I went over to talk with them, and I said, you know, we should have our own rooster crowing contest. So we did, right there in the mall.
You did not.
Yes,
And you
we
won?
did.
And you won?
Of course I won. I'm
Well-
a farm girl. This is Barbara Stadnacki from Morrisonville. And Barbara was someone that, right in the beginning of this, we went to because Barbara is a quilt appraiser and self-studied quilt historian.
Wow.
And she's an expert on fabrics of different periods. So Barbara helped Linda and I a great deal come up with what we could put out as reliable information. And this is a tribute to Aiken's volunteers and the Battle of Plattsburgh, of course, but in each of these small blocks Barb has the name of one of the volunteers. And of course, you know, these were 14 to 17-year-old boys who were going to the old Plattsburgh Academy. So when things started really heating up, here these kids came, and they had their muskets, and they went out and they did battle. So,
And some 2 decades later, the Congress, for the first time, and maybe the last time in history, decided to award each one of those boys with a rifle with a plaque on it.
excellent.
And a number of those rifles survive, and one of them is in our Clinton County Historical Museum right here in Plattsburgh.
Very good.
Aiken's Volunteers.
I thought you were going to say one was in your living room.
Oh, no. I'd live in a palace if that were true, because one showed up like 20 years ago on the Antiques Roadshow, and I think that it was estimated at something like $40,000 or $45,000 at
Ooh,
that time. So
wouldn't be in my home.
they would be priceless these days for sure.
This fabric, pillar, it's called pillar fabric, was very typical in the
I've seen it before. Yes.
1850s, 40s.
What a beautiful job, and it's
Yes.
such a busy quilt. I just find myself looking to every corner of it. You know,
Each one of those kids is a star.
isn't it great?
Yes.
All right. It's a display called Cot to Coffin. It's in the third floor auditorium, the rotunda, if you will, of Plattsburgh City Hall. We're doing this program with Calvin and Hometown Cable on the 9th day of September, 2014. But we are commemorating something that happened 200 years ago, around September 11th in 1814, as part of the War of 1812. It's something we hang our hat on historically here in the North Country because it was such an important naval encounter, along with the other things that happened on the land. Jean Welch,
Yes.
good to have you here.
Thank you.
What's this one?
This quilt, I didn't know what to expect when the paperwork came in. And this is Linda Richardson,
Yes.
Peru, New York. And this is called 1812 Battlefield Tent.
Wow.
And what she did blocks to simulate a tent. And here you would have whatever they had at the time, probably canvas, and then the seam in the center would have been a pole or even a musket if they had to use that.
In some cases, yes.
So this was, their canopy. It was where the soldiers spent their time.
Sometimes they made their tents, as she says right here, out of blankets.
Yes.
You know, bayonets, ramrods, pieces of trees, whatever they could. Because,
whatever they
you know,
had. And you know what? Probably this would have covered them.
Yeah.
A blanket that they had.
Well, that's what
from
they
home.
carried with them all the time. And these weren't, let us just say that these weren't anything like our modern militias would be.
No.
These were poor boys, many of them who just hadn't been off the farm for very long, where they were certainly ill-equipped.
You
And it's
sure will.
it's
And,
magnificent
you know,
to think that they fought so bravely back then.
I think about going outside in winter to get the mail and
Yeah.
maybe complaining about my cold toes
Yeah,
when I
yeah,
come
yeah.
back in, but these poor guys,
Oh boy, okay, next.
This is Brenda Rissette, who lives here in Plattsburgh, and this is God Bless Plattsburgh. And what Brenda did is, Brenda says that all of our American soldiers are deserving of our respect, and isn't that really the right way to feel?
Absolutely.
And so this is in celebration of all of our brave and courageous soldiers who have done whatever they have had to do for our country now and in the past. And she says, God bless the United States.
Now let's talk a little bit about the technical aspects of creating a quilt. I saw on the bottom this is machine pieced using a certain machine.
Yes.
And quilting done on long arm quilting systems. What
Yes.
the heck is that all about?
Well, I can talk to you about that because
Well, why don't you?
I am a long arm quilter.
Okay.
And
That had
the
nothing to do with the distance between your shoulder and the tips of your fingers, right?
well, in your brain. Always, the brain is always involved.
Oh, yeah.
But I have the actual piecing part, making these little designs can be done either on a sewing machine, a treadle machine, by hand, whatever you wish. But this kind of thing right here. That's called the actual quilting, where you're holding layers together. And I happen to know that Brenda has a machine that has a long frame that you load the top, the back, and the batting in between. And then this machine works on a track. Some of those machines are computerized.
Sure.
I would be arguing with the computer all the time, so mine is not computerized.
Oh.
Mine is run by my hands and my brain. The machine I have is on a 12-foot track, so I can do very large quilts, and the machine is about 40 inches long, and as it goes across the quilt, and I guide it, and my brain tells me what it's doing.
Oh, boy.
Other people, the computer is certainly a better brain.
Oh.
But
This
yeah,
shows,
there are advantages
still
to
shows
always.
the individuality. In
Oh,
the
sure.
in the olden days, they would have giant quilting frames. They would have to very often move the table out of the dining
Oh, yes.
room, and
Yes.
it took a big,
Yeah,
even for your frame, it takes a pretty good sized room.
Well, yes, but there are still folks around who do the hand quilting, and they get together with their friends, and they
Quilting bees, as they call
have a
them.
quilting bee.
I
Yes.
love it.
Yeah.
What could be better?
Over here, this is Vi Mesh, who lives in Morrisonville. And what Vi decided to do is, this is a tribute to her soldiers. And by her soldiers, her husband,
Husband Jim.
retired Air Force, and to Walter Mesh, who was in World War II, a World War II veteran. Her would be her husband's dad, and so this is a tribute to them. And Vi says this is a flying geese block, and the reason Vi did all the flying geese is she said, flying geese, they always know their way home.
Oh, see that?
And that is what Vi's story is that she's very proud.
It's so perfect that we're going around and different from what would have happened had Calvin and I just come here and looked at each one and not known the story.
Yeah. Oh, the stories are very
The stories are
heartwarming.
wonderful in each case. All right.
Okay, moving.
I'm moving.
Again. All right. This one. This is called Service to the United States. Carol Crowning Shield, down at Port Kent. I went to college with Carol, and didn't know that I was in the presence of a star.
Come on.
Okay, by this I mean Carol's husband is a direct ancestor of Benjamin Williams Crowningshield,
A descendant.
a descendant. And Benjamin Williams Crowningshield lived in Salem, Massachusetts, and he served as the Secretary of the Navy in the administration of James Madison and then Monroe. Now, how cool is that?
1809 to
believe
1825. Is it?
I mean, it's just so amazing that all of these people are in our midst, and we don't know it. And
That's a nice quilt too. I love
a
them. I love
beautiful
them all, but
quilt.
that one's very special.
the
Designs are well
the
balanced.
colors are very subdued.
Oh, boy.
But that's pretty cool.
I love it.
And this one, I'm actually going to give you a treat. You're going to be able to listen to somebody else other than me, because Diane is right here.
All right. Well, we can pause. We'll pause for a moment, okay? Oh, she's coming here. Hi, Diane.
Yeah.
Oh, you can gargle now. Diane, how are you?
Good.
Gargle now.
Diane Danford.
Yes.
You and I have met before.
Yes.
Tell me about your quilt.
My inspiration from my quilt actually came when I was researching the War of 1812. And the first thing that I came upon was it was noted as the forgotten war. So I felt no war should be
In
forgotten.
many circles, it still is, unfortunately,
Yeah.
in spite of all our attempts at publicity. So go ahead.
So I wanted to incorporate some events that happened during that war.
Yes.
So hopefully the viewer will take one of the events, at least something that will remind them that it happened during the War of 1812.
I'm trying to drink it all in.
like Francis Scott Key actually wrote the Star Spangled Banner
Star-Spangled Banner.
during the White House was actually burned during the War of 1812.
Yes.
And then there's Perry's victory on Lake Erie. That was one of the biggest naval battles of the War of 1812. And then the River Raisin Massacre and the Creek War
Oh, look at
Massacre.
this. Oh, my goodness.
A lot
You
of
had him
people.
cover it up for a minute. He's beautiful.
A lot of people never realize that the Native Americans actually, they were on the side of the British.
Yep.
But I still felt that they also served an important part of the war.
Of course, you got both flags on the top.
Yes.
What a wonderful quilt. Do you know how many hours were involved? Do you have any idea in making it?
Uh,
Have you kept track?
I did not keep track, but it took me about 4 weeks to actually piece it together because I had to have some of my, the embroidery was done at Homestead Embroidery in Penny
no
Sports. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, it's perfect
So-
in every way. So how did you choose, first of all, how do you choose the fabrics?
I had actually went to Utica to get the fabrics. I went to one of the quilting stores out there, and they had a whole section on in 1812 quilts.
Come on.
Material, yes.
Come on.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh my
Yep,
goodness.
absolutely. So I just picked what I wanted and went from there and started researching, and this is what I came up with.
That's special. We're
Yes,
going to
I love
send that to Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
and see
there you
what they
go.
say. I love it. All
thank
right.
you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much,
So,
Diane.
thank you.
Jean's ready again. In between times, they all have to take a little nap and have a cup of coffee.
Yes, that's right.
A lot of time on your feet, Jean. Tell me about this one. This is lovely.
This quilt was made by Joanna Fitzpatrick, and Joanna lives in Katyville. I thought this was really neat when she first talked to me about the quilt, and the idea that she had was that her dad was in the Air Force, and so the name she picked for her quilt is Military Daughter.
Perfect.
And what she wanted to do was, she was born and raised the daughter of an Air Force man who was also a Vietnam veteran. And she feels that the military, is ingrained in her. And this is her way of saying thank you to Dad and, kind of letting other people know that, she's a military daughter. and
There are
she's very
families
proud.
involved. How well we know.
Oh,
we
yes,
we call them. They call themselves military brats, right?
Well, she's
And
not
just-
a brat.
No, but I mean, it's just an endearing phrase.
Yes, it is.
It's like calling me
Yes.
a preacher's kid, a PK, because my
Oh,
father was a
okay.
preacher.
Yes.
But the preacher's kids were always the black sheep of the family and of the universe, I might add, through the years. So anyway,
Well,
that's
I-
wonderful because the families were involved then and
Oh,
they're
yes,
still involved.
they have to be involved, and there is no way that they're not involved. And it's a real hardship. I'm sure when her dad was in Vietnam that Joanna was growing up, and she was resilient, and is very proud of her family at her time.
I just want to pause for a moment to let our viewers know that this program and most of the other programs that Calvin and I do are available on the local cable systems here in the greater Plattsburgh area and in the northern tier in Champlain, but they're also available on the internet so that our viewers can find them by logging on to hometowncablenetwork.com and Plattsburgh.com. And it might be a little tricky, as I found in the last few days, to find precisely the program you're looking for because the programs have different names. This one is called Our Little Corner. I haven't been little in a very long time, except that my surname is only that long. But
I would not have known that.
oh, yes, Our Little Corner. And the late Bob Venn did in hundreds of these programs with Calvin before he had the bad sense to die, just as I was leaving the radio business in 1997. And his show was called what's going on here. And many of his programs are there, and they have become virtual video classics, including some of the very early ones. I look and see how many hits they've had. That's the nomenclature, things that are viewed by
That
people.
much about computers, I know.
And it's just amazing and wonderful. Somebody was talking to Calvin and I about the old Graves Mansion, a wonderful old Victorian home in Ausable Forks. And I remember that Bob Venn did one of the favorite programs of mine as he and Calvin did a video tour inside that old mansion. It's now falling into rack and ruin, and it kills me every time we drive by it. But I paused it that way just to let people know that if you're watching this in Germany or Minsk or where some other place, you can watch a lot of our programs. Thousands and thousands of them. Calvin puts new shows on all the time, as long as they'll squeeze onto those websites.
And you know, along with that, when you're talking about something like this, Military Daughter, what a wonderful way for our military to stay in contact with their hometown.
It is absolutely, and now we have a 4-museum complex on the former base with 4 wonderful museums, including the recently opened Plattsburgh Air Force Base Museum. And so people can stay in touch that way. We did a program after they opened as well. All right, next.
Okay, moving on. This is Priscilla Lauren and her husband Rick.
Okay.
And they call this Soldier's Memory from Home. And they were very specific in this. And what they have used are old clothing, old shirts. And
love
that
it.
would
I
have
love
been
it.
something that would have been done
Of course.
very, very
Who
often.
didn't have a rag bag, as my mother
Well,
used to call it,
I
right?
remember a rag bag
The rag
growing
bag,
up,
sure.
getting in there and cutting things up I
I
wasn't
can remember a
supposed
guy with a horse and a cart coming by and saying, rags for sale.
Rags.
Yep.
So that Rick and Priscilla live in Chazy, New York, and they really wanted this quilt to be really authentic to the
Yeah.
time, and therefore the clothing was cut up, and they also tied the quilt. So
Some
I think
people,
they
is
did a
that
great
just,
job.
that's just a personal choice of
That's
the time?
personal. That's well, back then that would have been the only thing, but now it's personal. You know,
Oh. Yeah, I
it's
love
personal.
it because it brings back memories
Oh yes.
of old quilts.
Over here, this quilt was done by a group of girls that get together Wednesday morning. They're called the Wednesday Morning Close Enough Quilters.
I love it. From
And
Peru, New
They're
York.
from the Peru area. We have Terry Camp, Linda Gibo, Dawn Mishler, Diane, Lucy St. Pierre, and Nancy Terrell. Now this quilt is very interesting because this Nancy Terrell's ancestor was Colburn Strong.
Is that a
and-
great name?
Yes.
Think about it.
And this quilt is to honor him. And he was the great-great-great-grandfather of Nancy Terrell,
Oh,
who was a
my.
member of the group.
Oh, my.
Now, Mr. Strong went into active service August 20th, 1814, in Captain Thomas Winslow's company. He was a private in the 9th Regiment New York Militia, which was called the Mariah Company, commanded by Colonel Martin Joyner, direct ancestor.
Isn't that so
It is.
great?
It
What
kinda,
meaning, what personal meaning
You know,
this
sends
is.
a tingle
Oh,
that
just-
there is just such a strong connection
The
to
rifle
the
and
past.
the eagle, huh? And the 9th, and we're doing this on the 9th day of September. That's
Yes.
even better.
This was hand quilted.
Yeah, I
Using
can
some
tell.
stars, oak leaves.
That's a lot of sewing, you know,
Yes, it is.
in case you didn't know.
Oh, I know it. And each person in the group did separate blocks, and then it was all brought together in one quilt. Beautiful.
Isn't that
Gorgeous,
beautiful?
gorgeous, gorgeous.
I love it. These are great.
This is done by Sandy Thornton in Peru. Or, I'm sorry, no, Morrisonville.
Well, so
Sorry.
many people from Morrisonville.
Oh,
All
it's
right.
a talented area.
Yes.
And Sandy, who I know loves the colors, the combination of red, white, and blue. And Sandy also wanted to depict the era, so she used very dull red, white, blues, and beiges. And Sandy, if you know Sandy, she said, I selected this pattern because I like it.
I love it. That's beautiful.
And, you know, it's awful hard to put in the number of hours, which is
Yeah.
limitless if you are not enjoying working with some of the fabrics that you're working
This was
with.
already been sold.
Yes, it has been sold.
Some of these quilts are for sale, and as we learned earlier from Jean and Linda, there's a little tag on each one that indicates that.
This one has been sold, and
And
The shirts have been
these quilts are historical all by themselves,
yes, they are.
and they'll be historical because they were made to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the battles of Plattsburgh. So they're historical in and of themselves and because of all the time and
And we've had people make quilts, commissioned to do quilts.
Oh, really?
For groups, and you'll meet one of them in
Okay.
a bit. This quilt was done by Joanne Forkey in Line Mountain, and
it's bright and beautiful. I
it
love
is
it.
very bright, and it's called Memories of Home. And what she did is exactly what you just said. She wanted to use these particular fabrics because she felt that these would remind a soldier of their home.
See, this quilt is made with love. And
Yes.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes.
Not that they all aren't made with love,
Well-
but this one is especially beautiful.
Joanne came right out and said it, and
You know, we've
It is true.
been fortunate enough not to read too many letters from that time era, but from we just celebrated the 150th anniversary of the America's Civil War.
yes.
And a lot of the letters
Mm-hmm.
were uncovered, and we spent quite a bit of time looking and listening to those letters, and did a great job with Dr. Southwick up in the Northern Tier in the library one day as he read a bunch of those letters that had been uncovered. And after all those years, it melts your heart.
Oh, it does.
Because there was a whole bunch of pathos involved, and conditions were horrible
terrible.
in all wars, but
Yes.
at this time, you know, they had none of the
You know, it's
modern
especially
comforts.
especially the Civil War, and you're going to meet a quilter and a few quilts down the road whose specialty is Civil War.
No kidding.
Yes,
Oh boy,
you
can't wait.
probably know her already.
Oh, I probably do.
This is, to me, a happy quilt. And this is Susan Sorrell, and Sue is from Plattsburgh. And the name of her quilt, Stars and Stripes Forever.
Makes me want to do the
Well,
John
yes.
Philip Sousa number.
And I made this quilt in honor of soldiers, past, present, future, that have and will sacrifice everything to protect our freedom.
Look at it.
And you know, one sentence, and that really says it all right
It really
there.
does look at it. You
really
can try to drink it
does.
all in with all the stars and the stripes
And,
forever.
It is gorgeous.
So much creativity goes into quilting, especially when you try to adhere to a theme like this one.
You adhere to the theme, but you also, there are certain rules.
There's latitude.
Certain rules in quilting having to do with latitude and longitude as far
Yep.
as things fitting together, which
Boy.
is another
I
part.
love it. That's a special one.
More stars. This is Sandy Murphy, and Sandy's from Willsboro. And this is called Thank You Stars. And since I live in, this is a good story, a little different. Since I live in Willsboro, I would like to honor Lieutenant Colonel Ransom Noble and officers and men of the 37th Regiment New York Militia under his command. Without a single loss, on May 13, 1814, at the mouth of the Bouquet River, the 37th Regiment repulsed the British boat party's attempt to destroy the public stores at Willsboro Falls. American casualties were 2 wounded, and British casualties about 30 killed and wounded. And I mean, here again,
It's a real story.
It is a wonderful
real
story.
story.
It's right in her backyard. I will tell you something kind of funny.
What?
When I was preparing this to hang, the story to hang, I had to call her and check on my spelling. Because if you notice, Willsboro today
Yep.
is different from Willsboro long ago. The spelling of Willsboro has
But
changed.
the Boquet River is still the
The
Boquet
Bouquet
River.
River is still the Bouquet, and one of the best
Yeah.
fishing spots around.
Oh, that's a great one. Okay, what's next?
Okay, the next one is I'm going to take a break, and we're going to have Vicki come over. Vicki Evans.
All right, let's pause a minute. Up until a few minutes ago, Vicki Evans was sitting nice and peacefully at a table. Somebody says, up and at 'em, Vic.
I know, yes.
And here we are. How are you?
I'm good, thank
I'm
you.
delighted to hear that. I love these quilts.
Oh, I know, they're
This
beautiful.
is a
Yeah,
very
there's-
special thing for Calvin. Most of what we do is very special, but a quilt show,
I know.
I forgot to ask, now these quilts, are they being judged? while they're
I
here?
don't think so. I think they have a viewer's choice.
Oh, is that a viewer's choice?
Yeah,
That's nice.
everybody gets to vote on one.
Well, from 1 to 10, I give everyone a 10.
I know.
So, that's the way I am.
Right.
So tell me about this.
Well, I was asked to do a quilt by the Clinton County Historical Association. This is, they actually put it in the show, but I quilted it for them.
okay.
They, I guess you could call, commissioned me to do it for them. And the reason being that I had made a Civil War quilt for them
You love
a
Civil
while back.
War
Yes.
time in history, huh?
Yes, I do. I was a Civil War reenactor for years,
Oh,
and
I know you
I've
were.
studied it and studied it. But anyway, I had to learn about the War of 1812. I've only lived up here for 12 years, so I didn't know a lot about it.
So that exodus
And,
from where? Where were you born or brought up?
Well, actually, I was born in Ulster County, New York.
Ulster County.
New York.
Okay.
Moved to Hamilton County in 32 years ago. We moved there. Excuse me.
We're sneaking up
And
north
yeah, I
one little
know.
chunk at a time, huh?
And now we're up here. We've been up here 12 years.
Okay.
So-
Where in Ulster County?
Well, I was born in Ellenville. After I got married, I lived in Pine Bush, which is Orange County.
Oh, of course. I was born in Rockland County.
Oh, okay.
know,
Yeah, you know the
We're
territory there.
neighborhood friends.
Right.
All right, so tell me more.
Anyway, I didn't really know what to do, and I decided I wanted something educational. I wanted to show the different places in the area that are related to the Civil War. I mean, I'm sorry, you got me talking that way.
there you go.
1812, excuse me. And so I picked different scenes out of the internet because a lot of these places aren't here anymore. Some of them aren't. And I wanted to show the sea battle and the land battle, and I wanted to show different houses and different people and the American and the British. So anyway, I picked something that was significant for each place.
Well, and they're in a perfect order as far as I'm concerned, from the Dewey Tavern all the way down through. That's wonderful.
Well, I didn't plan it that way, actually. I just wanted to fit them all in so
you
that they
got
look
you
good.
fit 'em perfectly.
So, like this house here, for instance, is Thomas Miller's house on Quarry Road, on the corner of Quarry Road and Tom Miller Road, across from the United Way. This one was the United States Hotel. That's not there anymore. I think that's the place where Israel Green's Tavern was, over on Bridge Street. This is Sampson's Tavern, was Sampson's Tavern. It's an apartment building now. It's in Ingraham.
It's still,
Oh, yes. There's a sign
I
there. that
like ghost
says,
stories, and that area is so haunted.
Oh, really?
Right there.
Oh, really?
If you
Wow.
drive through there, you can feel it, baby.
I won't tell my daughter.
Don't tell her.
Oh,
Okay.
there's Dewey's Tavern, and then this is Ira Howe's house up
Yeah.
here in the corner. That's on by 22 there. This is Isaac Platt's house, which is the VFW now on Quarry Road.
Yep.
So, I've got a couple of monuments. I've got a little bit of everything. A map.
It's wonderful, and they're transferred so beautifully.
Oh,
Is
thank
there
you.
hand sewing involved here?
I didn't do any. No. Oh no, I didn't. I'll be truthful with you.
Oh, don't worry about it.
I didn't actually know I was going to do it until sort of the last minute.
Oh,
So
really?
they gave me a month or two, but it was.
It is beautiful.
I had a lot of other things going on right at that time. So
Once again, we'll refresh the memories of our viewers in case they missed us way back in the beginning. This whole display is taking place during the 200th anniversary of the Battles of Plattsburgh here in the city of Plattsburgh at City Hall in the third floor rotunda. The display is called Cot to Coffin. The reason for that is this size
Right.
This size was used as a blanket from one end of the lifespan,
Right.
and oftentimes all the way to the other, carried as a roll at the back of their back sack as they walked around, and sometimes they slept with it, of course, and sometimes they were even buried in it. So
Right. And
It's-
the reason they called cot is that was the perfect size for a cot
I love it.
in the tent.
I love it. You did a
All
great
right.
job, Vic.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Jean, what have we next?
Oh, this is a gorgeous quilt.
I love it.
This was made by Carrie Sanger right here in Plattsburgh, New York. And this is called On the Banks of Champlain. And what Carrie has done, she has hand embroidered, hand quilted the words to the song, The Banks of Champlain. I wish I knew the melody, but I
Wow,
don't.
it's beautiful.
And The Banks of Champlain was written by Catherine McComb. And she was watching the Battle of Plattsburgh from her porch when the battle was happening. And here her husband is out there fighting. Well, imagine what is going through your head. And so what
Yeah.
she did is she wrote this poem, which is a song. It was sung in one of the in the play, Rich Snell's play. They sang this song. And The Banks of Champlain, Catherine McComb.
I love it.
Isn't it great?
Oh,
And everything is hand done.
Just look at it. Just look at it. So
We're moving
perfect.
over here to another flying geese, and Judy is the quilter is
Yeah,
here.
she's running now.
And
She thought she
she's
was
going
gonna get
come right
another rest. Get
and-
over here,
and
Judy.
She is going to tell you about her quilt.
All right. Come on over, Jude. How are you?
I'm good.
Tell me about your quilt, Judy.
The idea for the quilt came from a book on a history of quilts, and there was a fragment pictured from a quilt from 1810, and it's called Wild Goose Chase, and I named mine the same. And just scraps are used to make these, which are these are the wild geese.
Oh, yes. They've showed up before in a couple other quilts.
Right.
I love it.
And it was a way to use up scraps, and it was a very popular pattern then. And so I decided that's what I would do for this. And I used scraps, and then I just put a border around it. I decided that given this is supposed to be from back in 1810, and even though I pieced all the pieces together, I hand quilted it.
Did you really? Oh,
Yes.
Judy.
So it's all hand quilted in the geese, and then there and around the edge.
Well, we learned about a wild goose chase today. After all of that, Calvin and I have been on a few of those ourselves over the years. Have you quilted a long time, Judy?
Not consistently, but for about 20 years, kind of as I find time. Now that I'm retired, it's a
It's
little
a
easier.
good exercise and a great outlet for creativity, isn't it?
Yes.
I love it. Thanks so much for being with us, Judy. You did great. Okay, and let's go to. There you are. I
am
thought you were
here.
gone.
Oh, no.
Okay,
I
Jean.
hide behind the quilts.
Uh-huh.
This is Margaret Telford, and Margaret is from Katyville. And this quilt, as you can see, the eagle, is called Fierce Eagle Pride.
I love it.
I do too.
I say that a lot today, but I do love it.
I
I
do
don't use
too.
that phrase lightly.
Well, see, I like it because I'm a retired teacher of Beekmantown.
Well, I know you
Eagle
are.
Pride. So what Margaret did is she hand tied, and she did a combination of a printed panel, that is what this is called, along with her piecing in very, very patriotic colors. And the eagle, important since the early republic and the symbol of supreme power, and therefore Eagle Pride. And this is dedicated to all veterans who fought with fierce eagle pride and defended our nation.
I love it.
Really nice.
Very, very special.
And then we go to kind of a different color palette, but still typical of the time. This is Mary Lou Baharnwa.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you know
Mary
Mary
Lou,
Lou of
sure.
Shazy. And Mary Lou has done this as a memorial quilt to some of the men in her family, namely her first brother, George Raymond Tyndall, who served as a translator in the Navy during the Vietnam conflict. Her other brother, Carl Michael Tyndall II, who served in the first U.S. Army and then the Navy. And lastly, her stepfather, Ernest Oliver Guthrie, who was a Navy Seabee with the 35th Battalion during World War II. So Mary Lou went at this from the standpoint of all of these men in her life who had been in the military, and she is honoring them.
What
So
a wonderful, and
it is, and
it's subtle, but it's gorgeous.
it's beautiful. I love the quilt design on it,
Yeah,
which
so
was
do I.
done by a local lady. Her name is Sue Minnie.
Okay,
So
I love it.
All
Around
right.
the corner.
this is interesting. This is Esther Thornton, and Esther lives in Locke, L-O-C-K-E,
Yes.
New York. And Esther was up here with you guys were there, I believe. It was a history conference
Yes,
that happened at the Holiday Inn,
Yes.
probably 3 months ago.
I was there.
And Esther was there. I was there with some of these quilts, trying to get people interested and willing to participate. And Esther was there, and then I gave her some paperwork to say she would do a quilt, the application, and I received it in the mail. And for everybody from Plattsburgh, this Esther tied this quilt. And Esther says that she chose the Yankee Puzzle pattern, which was a favorite in New York and in New England starting in the Revolutionary War period. And she said, this quilt gives me an everlasting connection to Plattsburgh and its history.
You do.
So all of you local people out there, you see how important we are. Other people really want to connect with us.
Yeah, those are bonds that we've tried to create, Calvin and I, for many, many
And-
years, to get people to come here and see us and study our history, and to get the local people involved in it too.
And you've been successful.
So,
This quilt is Margaret Tallman, right here in Plattsburgh, New York. And what Margaret wanted to do, 200 years, the Wright family legacy. And so what she has created through beautiful hand applique work is a heart for ancestors in her family. And she started out, our family history begins with a young woman named Catherine Kate Friend, who was born in Newington, England. She married an Episcopalian clergyman, Cecilius Wright. Be like you. And in 1854, believing in the promise of stability of the region, they came to Saranac, New York. And their son, also Cecilius, became a farmer, established their family roots, and now, March 22nd, 2014, Alistair Tallman was born, and the legacy lives on.
our
So,
daughter Diane is married to Roger Wright from Saranac, New York. So how do you
Wow.
like that, huh?
look at the connections.
Yeah.
Over here we have, this quilt was done by Linda Davis. Linda Davis happens to be my sister, and she lives in Lockport, New York, and so she and some of her quilt friends in Lockport did quilts for this show to support our area. And this is called Nothing Wasted. And absolutely,
I can tell.
Yes. These are all 9 patches and bi-squares, quarter squares. And you talk about quilting to get all of these pieces to come together to create a rectangle is amazing to me.
I can't
But
even believe it.
she purchased nothing. These are all things that have been left over from other projects.
Scraps.
Yeah.
Oh my
All left over.
goodness, look at that.
This is large piecing for Linda. She usually does about a quarter that size.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, she's crazy.
Come on.
She,
Incredible.
This quilt is also from Lockport, New York, and this was done by a friend called Judy Shriver of Lockport, and she calls this the color of war. They're all 4-inch squares, and the colors were typical of the period. This was a very difficult, quilting can be difficult, although this was a very easy pattern. Judy happens to only deal in very bright colored batik fabrics. To her, these are very dull colors, and this
Oh,
was
really?
a very
Some of them are pretty bright for me.
well, see, but not for Judy. And this was a very difficult project
no,
for
isn't
her.
that interesting?
And it
That's
was-
the backstory,
It
isn't
was
it? Huh?
difficult because of the color. for
Oh,
her.
I love the colors. The colors, I see colors there that I haven't seen in a long, long time.
This quilt is, to me, just so simplistic and amazing.
And unique and wonderful.
This
And boy,
is-
I'm getting a rush of memories
It's
here
all
from
wool.
my own
It's
childhood.
wool. Recognize this Pendleton.
Oh my goodness.
And this.
Oh
These
my,
are
my,
all
my.
wool squares. That
It's probably the only one with all wool squares.
It is.
Here.
It is. It is the only one.
That's why it's
And
special and unique.
This is hand stitching that she put all of these
Look
together.
at this.
This is Grace Ewage of Willsboro, New York.
Oh,
And this is called One Patch, and it is a one patch. Grace put these rawhide strings on because typically these quilts would have been rolled up.
rolled up and tied with the
tied.
rawhide.
Yes.
Who would
with
think of
rawhide.
that? I
Grace
love
did.
it.
Grace did from Willsboro did. And
Warm on the
I think
front
it's
and the
beautiful.
backing is wool.
The
Also, she
backing
says,
is
look at
wool.
this.
Everything
Oh,
is
my.
wool. And we all know, come December and January, wool is certainly a nice thing.
I just saw
I
another
think it's
weather
beautiful.
map from forecast for a terrible winter this year. I hope the caterpillars are wrong and the old farmer's almanac is wrong.
Well,
and
I don't know.
oh,
I can never see which of the woolly bear parts
I
are
don't know
supposed to
which one.
predict,
I don't
but
even know.
I've seen a lot of woolly bears.
I just fire up the snowblower and let it go.
This quilt is machine pieced, and this is called The Hours Are Long, and I am the person who made this quilt. And what we are having folks do when they come in is sign these light-colored patches. So we're having people who have volunteered with all of the work for the Battle of Plattsburgh do that. And then this quilt might find a new home to live in.
I love it. I love it with
So-
the idea of signing it.
Yes.
Now, is this your poem?
This is my poem.
Read it
yes.
for me.
Oh, boy, here we go. The hours are long. As you left, I rolled this quilt and tied it to your haversack to protect you from the cold. The hourglass, time eternal, time so short, time measured. Time is so long since I saw you and held you in my arms as we said goodbye. I sit and stitch as the clock ticks on. I wait for word, any word of your fate. As the clock ticks on, I hear a knock. Is this word? The hourglass. Time eternal, time so short, time measured.
I love it.
And this is an hourglass
Oh my
block.
goodness, that's beautiful, Jean. Thank you for
Thank
doing
you
that.
very much.
Wow.
Over here.
Moving onward, Jean, what do we have?
Moving onward, we're going to
Yeah.
Lockport, New York again, and this is Beverly Rosenberg. And Bev says that if you're a quilter, you know that scraps and stash fabrics are forever with you. And therefore the name of Bev's
I love
quilt,
it.
Forever with,
With
you.
you.
And this quilt is totally scraps. And Bev did not have a hard time working with these particular fabrics because this is Bev's favorite.
Oh, is it really?
Oh, it is.
Oh,
She
my.
loves what are called the reproduction duller color fabrics. Unlike her friend Judy, that likes the bright, bright.
Yeah.
Bev cannot do that.
She likes
So
this.
She likes this.
I do too. It's
And
very,
I
very
do too.
impressive.
And everything is from something else, which would have been the way things were done.
Who knows how it all started, and then it just works its way onward. I love it. Okay.
This is my quilt, and this is a quilt that, again, throughout the year of meetings, volunteers have been signing it. And this, again, will probably find a different home to live in after this year's battle is over. And this is called a rail fence block. And so the name of it is The Rail Stand Straight and Strong. Whenever I do a quilt, I try to come up with a little poem related to whatever the name
Read
of the
it.
block. Read it.
I
Okay.
love it.
They try, oh, how they try to scale the rails. The rails, they age with time, but the fence stands tall. Oh, how they try to climb the rails. You laid the rails so straight and strong to keep the animals in, but never did we think how the rails keep the redcoats out. They try, oh, how they try to scale the rails to take us over, but each is thrown back as a rail stand, straight and strong.
You know, and this harks to some of the battles during the Civil War in Gettysburg.
Oh, yes.
Think about it.
Yes, the rails
So-
at Gettysburg.
Oh, my goodness. What a one. You are such a wonderful woman.
Well,
Thank
thank
you so much for doing that and sharing it with us.
Good. We're back in Lockport. And
Why not?
This is Mary Sue Rogers. And Mary Sue, again, is a friend who wanted to show support to the area. Mary Sue is becoming the primary caregiver of a member of her family. So she hand quilted this as she was at home, being the caregiver that she is. And this is called Scrappy Four Patch. And this is a four patch.
Yes.
And then these strips in here.
And her grandmother used to make smaller
her
versions for crib and
grandmother
cradle quilts.
made
Perfect for this.
And I love this.
Oh, my
I am going
goodness.
to do something with this pattern. I just think it's so beautiful.
Oh, good.
So thank you, Mary Sue, all the way out
Oh,
there
I love it.
for doing it for us.
You wonder what will become of all these far into the distant future.
Oh, I don't know. They'll be sweat upon
Maybe
and
in
snuggled up. and-
somebody's hope chest, maybe.
I hope so.
Well, Norma was here when I got
Norma
here.
Hamburger was here. Norma is
We've known
from
Norma for such a
Chateauguay.
long time.
Norma and I went to high school together.
Come on.
We did. We went to high school together. And Norma is a veteran, a military veteran.
yes.
She was a nurse in the service. And so Norma, this is called Patriot's Choice. And Patriot's Choice was chosen to represent the choice soldiers make when leaving home to fight for freedom. And isn't that the truth, the choice?
Oh, boy, oh, boy.
Having a quilt from home is a symbol of family support, and that is even true today. My own family has both men and women, including myself, who have served our country. This quilt is a piece of my heart to all the soldiers who have
Isn't that
served.
tender and sweet?
Yes, it is.
Each one of these quilts is a
Just-
piece of the maker's heart.
That is just like Norma,
Oh,
tender
of
and
course.
sweet.
What a great lady she is.
Moving on, Patty Gagne, and Patty is a resident here in Plattsburgh. And Patty calls this quilt Threads of Admiration, and thread and
I think the titles are the
admiration.
best part of some of these. Aren't they beautiful?
And the colors in this
Oh,
are gorgeous.
yes.
And this quilt is dedicated to my father, to her father, and all veterans. She found the pattern. It's a modern pattern. But, you know, we all take put some of our own personality into whatever we make. And so many long hours spent doing this and probably thinking about her dad, I'm sure.
I'm sure we learned that through all of our quilt watching over the years that some of these are consistent patterns that are used over and over again.
Over and over again.
Some are
And
absolutely unique.
yeah, and there are a lot of new things that are coming out all the time.
Really?
And you know, you just got to get them and got to try them.
Oh, look at this one.
This one
Is
is
this
done by.
special? Look at this.
This is Ada Hutchins, and Ada's from Willsboro. And what Ada wanted everyone to see is what a soldier comes home to. And this is a trail. Oops, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
And this is coming home. And Ada says, under his flag, he is coming home to his trees. He's coming home to his children, to his family,
Look at
to the
this.
fence he built, to his barn, to his home. And you even see little chickens
Oh my
and
goodness.
the
Come on.
animals that dotted his fields.
This one is really
And
special
I-
too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh my
It
goodness.
is. They're all so unique. But this was Ada's interpretation of a particular soldier finally getting
Flag
home.
he fought for and
the
defended.
flag,
Flag
and
of the
his
opposing
home,
army.
his
Yeah,
kids,
Isn't it amazing?
and his chickens, his
I
animals.
love it.
Yeah, look at
Oh,
the.
that's
I
a-
wonder if that's the plucky rooster.
Well, that
he
could
looks
be.
it.
Could be. He jumped off the ship.
This.
All right, Gene, we're underway again.
We're underway again, and one thing I wanted to mention, kind of on the side, is that when people come into the show, We're very friendly.
Of
But
course
we-
you are. If that isn't obvious, nothing is.
We would like to also have you participate in a couple different things we're doing. And one is that Carol Meyer up at Fiber Junction and the Quilt Shop in Ross's Point has been kind enough to donate 2 awards that will be given to the viewer's choice. And so when you come in, there is a form that you can write down the name or the person who made the quilt of your favorite. And those 2 top vote getters, if you want to call it that, will receive something from Carol.
That's why
So-
I hate to judge things like this, because I love every one of them
Everyone.
equally. They'd all get 10 points,
Yeah.
a 10 out of 10 for me.
So, we really thank Carol up in Fiber Junction, Ross's
that's
Point,
great,
for doing that. Another thing that we do is we have a form that we call Good News. And as you go through, you can fill out 100 of these if you wish. And it's always nice to receive feedback when you're involved. I'm sure you gentlemen like the feedback of your shows. And you can write whatever you wish on one of these forms, hand it in, we take it and put it in an envelope and give it to the quilter.
I love
So,
it. That's great.
it's nice.
So we have.
This is called Twists of War. Now, this is
Isn't this terrific?
Yvonne
Look at it.
Gwynn of Saranac, and this is made with what is called a twister tool. It's one of those new things that have come on the market. And when Yvonne, she didn't know what to say about this. So I said, well, tell me something about your
Twists
family.
and turns and
Twists and turns.
I love it.
And what that refers to is Yvonne and her husband she was originally from Great Britain. Then they moved to Canada. Then they moved to the U.S. So that whole twist
Twists and
of where you end up. But she wrote a little ditty too.
Oh, she did.
This quilt was made using a twister tool because wars and battles don't follow a rule. There are twists and turns in victory and defeat. Our ancestral history isn't complete. We can't know for sure when looking back years which side loved ones fought for and shed all their tears. Those fighting in Plattsburgh in 1814 used twists the British could not have foreseen. And to all of the soldiers in battles through time, we salute you and thank you with this little rhyme.
Isn't that great?
So, this is
That's a special one for me, too.
it's
very,
really
very special.
nice. It
You
is.
look at little parts and then you try to take in the whole.
Yes.
It's great.
Yes. I especially like this because this
Oh.
fabric was designed by my niece.
Come on.
Yes.
You're kidding me.
Yes. So
That's a
I
dandy.
just think it's a happy.
That's a dandy. Now you're gonna rest.
I am
And
going
Linda's
to
gonna
rest,
come
and
back.
We're going to have Linda come over here because she's our resident Crab Island expert.
Oh, she is. We know Linda and we
So
know her
I
interest in
will
Crab
go-
Island. Thank you so much, Jean.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
She's back. Linda.
Hey, I'm back again here.
So, you know a lot about Crab Island, and our viewers maybe don't know that, but you've had an interest in that place
Few
since the
years
first
now.
time, before you ever went there. You knew about it.
Yeah, from school times, yeah. And then when I first got to go over by boat, it was looking all around and seeing the current few things that are there. But now I love to hear the history and would love to know where the men are located. But there's
You
opposing
spent-
parties there.
And you deserve at least $1 billion for all the time you spent on your hands and knees clipping and cutting and
Looking for those stone paths.
the whole thing. But it is a special place for both Calvin and me. So tell us about this one.
This is a quilt done by Phoebe Emerson. She lives near Crab Island. And one day when she got up, there was a beautiful rainbow
Look
over
at
the
this.
island.
Just look at it.
Isn't it beautiful? And she took a photograph of it. And of course, it was reflected down into the water. The lake was still. I mean, it's an amazing picture to see, but then to have her recreate it is wonderful. And here is the obelisk on the island.
Of course it is.
And the
As we
reason
well know.
how this story came together is one of the men buried on Crab Island is named Everson,
Come on.
spelled the same way as
Oh
hers.
my goodness.
So she dedicated this blanket to that person,
Richard.
Richard. Yes. And it's just lovely to look at. A lot of little piecing here to bring the accent colors down in. A lot of work.
Each one is unique in its own way. This one, they're all special. I've said that about every
I
one.
know.
People ask
We
me,
need
Gordy, do you
another
love
word.
everything? I said, I really do, but when it comes to quilts, this one is unique and beautiful.
And it's very bright in
Oh.
comparison to the vintage colors.
Yeah.
You know, the colors of yesteryear.
Oh, tell her I said I
It's
love that
very
one.
happy.
All right, move over here. Here we go.
This is a friend of mine, Jack Barrett. We've carved together. He's a retired art instructor from Beatman Town. And Jack's passion is he's a reenactor,
Yes.
and he has great admiration for Commodore McDonough. So he created this quilt in honor of Commodore McDonough. And he's got the
This is the first
monument
quilt he ever
downtown.
did.
Yes.
He's another one of those creative people who does everything else in the world, and this is the first quilt he ever made.
First quilt he ever made, no sewing machine. I will say this, though. He has made most of his reenacted outfits with needle and thread.
No, you're
Yeah.
kidding me.
Yeah, I think so. So he's familiar with needle and thread, but his art background to choose those colors to make it bring out the features is
and
amazing.
it does, from a distance and up
Yeah,
close.
yeah. And he's got the date and the flagship and the McDonough Monument downtown on there. It's just lovely.
And
Yeah.
the flags. My goodness, when you consider all the work and the time and effort, another one of the most creative people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
That's terrific. All right.
And he's very busy in this reenactment this weekend with the Boy Scouts
Oh,
and
yes.
everything. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, otherwise he'd have been here today.
The Boy Scouts have a camporee going on at the Oval, and I'll be telling a ghost story or two.
Oh, you're going over there then?
Around the campfire.
Make their little eyes big.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful.
Look at this one.
Well, this is mine.
I know it is.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Jack Barrett gave me the paperwork saying he and Jean wanted to create this. I remember it was December and 2011, and I misinterpreted. I thought I had to have it done by 2012. So
Oh,
I
come
started
on.
working
Oh.
like an insane person.
Oh, you were, yeah, but you always work like an insane person. That's
And I
beautiful.
had worked on it for about a year when I finally found out, oh, it's not due until 2014. So when I started making it, I didn't know what I was going to use to honor the men at Crab Island. That was my goal, and I drew medallions on it and all different things that nothing looked right. And I swear to you, I went to sleep one night and I dreamt of chain with the men's name in the links of the chain, and that's how this
We know that because
happened.
you've shared that story with us. And as a matter of
Yeah.
fact, we've got you on tape saying that at your
Right.
house at one
And the
point in
story
time.
hasn't changed, so
But
it's-
why isn't that wonderful? So you spent how many more hours doing the names?
the names in the chain were 84 hours.
See,
And-
most people don't keep track of their time because
I-
it takes days and weeks. And
I learned that in carving. People go up and they look at their carving. How long did that take you?
Yeah,
They
20
immediately
minutes?
ask.
No.
Yeah. So when I do something that I think is going to be significant, I keep a paper and I put hash marks every hour I work, so that way I know how long it took. But I'm finding more and more information about the names. Jack Bilo, a local historian,
oh, well, we know Jack.
wrote the book of the War of 1812 Death Register, I believe.
Yeah. We did a show with him when he finished it.
And I have found out two of the names on this quilt fought with the British on the British ships, but they had been impressed off an American ship and taken onto the British, had to fight for them and died here in
That did
Plattsburgh,
happen, yes.
where they came from, the United States, or were now living in the United States. I have two names here, Thomas Gill
Yes.
and Thomas Rogers, and they were both boys that are buried out at Crab Island. I'm not sure, but they were probably like the powder monkeys that were running down
Yeah,
getting
they probably
the gunpowder.
were. Could be anything, yes. But that happened in almost all the wars, including the Civil War, where you have young
Right.
teenagers and juveniles.
And to fill in the rest of the quilt, you know, I put the flagpole, which has a lot of history with its falling
Our
down.
viewers know all about it.
Going
Yes.
out there by helicopter. I think you were there that day.
Oh, we were there through the whole thing, and when they finally pulled it up, and I kid John Rock and said it only took 2 cases of beer and a lot of block and tackle.
There, that's true.
But
That's right.
they did a beautiful job, and
Oh, my gosh,
it's there
yes.
forever and ever. And there are people behind the scenes and people who are familiar to our viewers who have worked so hard
Mm-hmm.
to commemorate all of this that we're talking about here today, and especially Crab Island. You know how Calvin and I think about it. We might go out there once or twice before this week or through, as we're doing this on the 9th
I
of
would
September.
assume that you'll also be at Clinton Community at the reenactment of the hospital. Rather than have it out in the island where people
Oh, yes.
can't get there, that'd
Yes.
be great to see. And I'm
Absolutely.
so glad that you guys are
All
going
of
to
these
record
things,
that.
Calvin's only going to bed every 4th day, I think, during the Battles of Plattsburgh commemoration, because how often does the 200th anniversary come along? Certainly once in our lifetime.
And just think, Calvin, another 100 years when they have the 300th, people will be looking at your videos.
I hope so. I hope they have a way to play them.
I wonder what kind of clothes
in
they'll be
those
wearing
days.
then.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's basically the story. I
That's
just
very special, and
wanted
you are
to
very
bring
special,
recognition.
Linda. And I want you to know that I appreciate that you invited Calvin and I here. When you first told me about
top
it,
on my list.
I said yes. It's
Top on
one.
my list.
It's
Thank you.
wonderful. Thank you so
So
much.
glad you came.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Well, that wraps it up for our capturing of the wonderful exhibit of quilts up on the 3rd floor of Plattsburgh City Hall to commemorate the battles of Plattsburgh and to the 200th anniversary celebration. To learn a lot of history today, to learn a lot about quilting and what those bedrolls were all about and why they maintained the same size. We have a beautiful view across Lake Champlain to almost precisely where the Battle of Plattsburgh, the Naval Battle of Plattsburgh, was held, right between those trees on Plattsburgh Bay. In front of the Plattsburgh City Hall in downtown Plattsburgh, of course, is the McDonough Monument. We talked a lot about him earlier today. And so we are in an historic place, and one of the first shows that Calvin and I ever did was at this building with Keith Hercolo, who was then the city clerk in the town of Plattsburgh, or the city of Plattsburgh. So history sometimes tries to repeat itself, and we never let that happen exactly as time goes on. We hope you're enjoying all the programs that Calvin has done and the ones I've joined in with for this commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the Battles of Plattsburgh. We thank you all for your comments, your suggestions. We thank you especially if you can help us out a little bit monetarily. I say this every time in hopes that you will write a generous check and send it to Calvin Castine in care of Hometown Cable, 1477 Ridge Road in Champlain. And who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.